Hi, everyone, and welcome to this session around retention through coaching. Excited to be here with Ashley Pelliccione from Bobbie and Rachel Lockett from Stripe. Before we get into intros, I just want to remind everyone that we definitely want to keep this conversational. We want to hear what you're all thinking about the different things that we're throwing around. So feel free to drop any questions that you have in the Q&A that you want Ashley and Rachel to answer. Also, any questions that you have, you can also drop in the comment section. So today we're talking about something that I am extremely excited about. I'm really passionate about coaching. Yes, I'm a geek about coaching. So excited to be here. And I think one of the big things that we want to focus on is this concept of making sure that we're leveraging all the tools that we have effectively for retention. It's a huge thing in the remote and hybrid workforce that we're all a part of today. So we want to work through this and just talk a bit about it and see if you can leave with some tips. So jumping in, my name is Misha Bartlett. I'm the head of sales at Pando. I've been at Pando for the past year and a half. Prior to Pando, I started about 8 years ago at a company called Greenhouse, which some of you may have heard of, and that was my entry into the people space, leaving behind supply chain and my med device world, which is much different than the tech startup space. And entering into this world, we move really fast, right? We work with lots of people. There's lots of opportunities for mentorship, growth, leadership. And when I got into my position at Greenhouse, I realized I was missing some tools in helping people grow meaningfully in ways that felt impactful for them and that helped them to realize their potential. So I ended up going and becoming a coach, a certified coach. And have worked with lots of individuals on the go-to-market side and founders in the tech space to help them grow through and again realize their potential. So again, hence my geeking out about this topic. I'll hand it over to Ashley to introduce herself.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. It is a pleasure to meet everyone, and I share the same passion in that I love coaching in all of its aspects. So currently, I'm the director of talent at Bobbie. Before joining Bobbie, I spent time building people programs at small companies, large companies, across so many different spectrums, finance, indoor vertical farming, and I'm very grateful to be among some of the best at Bobbie. In terms of my role and what I've played in the HR space, I've done everything from working with managers to leaders. I've gone through hypergrowth, scaled teams. I've seen the other side of the coin. I've been an HR team of one. I've also been on an HR team of many. And so I am incredibly excited to just share some helpful nuggets, especially in the world of coaching.
Great. Thanks so much. I'm really excited to be here as well. I'm Rachel Lockett, and my experience with coaching is somewhat similar to Ashley's. And I was a certified coach as well through CTI about 10 years ago. So I started my own coaching company and have been working with executives at quickly scaling startups from, small companies, 100 people. And then I've also been an HR business partner, internally coaching and building out talent programs for coaching at scale at kind of mid-sized tech companies. So kind of 2,000 to 10,000 in the last 8 years. So I've been at Pinterest and now I'm at Stripe. So I kind of come at coaching from a personal passion, like Misha. I really love working with executives and understanding their leadership challenges and helping them grow. And then also thinking about how do we actually unlock potential at scale with talent programs. So eager to talk about all of that today.
Great. So let's jump into this and just kind of frame coaching. I think there's so many different types of coaches out there. There's so many different definitions to coaching. There's so many times where you jump into a coaching conversation and it's not coaching at all. So let's start with actually framing what is coaching. Let's start with you, Rachel.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think, you can look up many different definitions online, but the way I think about coaching is you're really helping someone unlock their inner resources, their strengths and skills, and their support network to help them maximize their potential. So rather than thinking you have the answer and you're guiding someone to the right outcome, you're helping them recognize what inner resources and context and support they can leverage to really reach a better outcome and identify their goal. So that's how I think about it.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree. And I think the other thing when I think about coaching and managing and the value of both, great leaders actually know how to coach and manage. It is not, I think a lot of times in the world of coaching, it comes up of like coaching versus managing and what are the differences. And there are certainly differences that we'll get into. But it is so essential that great leaders are actually combining both of those and doing both of them effectively at the right time. When I think about coaching, it's connecting people to possibilities at work, at home, in yourself, with others, pretty much everywhere in the world and how you show up. I also think a lot of times when you hear the word coaching, sometimes it can have a negative connotation and people actually make the assumption that, oh, coaching, something must be wrong. When in reality, coaching is expansive. It taps into the possibility of leaders, and it's really meant as this incredible tool to continue to get curious and ask those questions. On the flip side, managing is also great. I think when you turn on managing, it's really about what results you need to get from the team. Sometimes it's digging in and getting really tactical. It's when you think about managing, there's a lot of value to that when it comes to making some big decisions. And if you need to get a decision over the finish line, sometimes managing is where it's at.
I just want to build on what you said, Ashley. I love your connecting people with possibilities notion. I also think that coaching is both about what you're doing and who you're being. And
Yes.
often in our fast-paced environments, especially rapid scaling companies, people are so focused on what they're doing that they lose track of who they're being. And so coaching is actually a moment and a spaciousness to take a step back and be intentional that you're moving in the right direction,
Yep.
that you're showing up the way you want to lead. And I think that whole concept of managing versus coaching and choosing when to do both, we call it situational leadership at Stripe, is really about being intentional. You can't actually manage your entire team the same way when you have a spectrum of experiences and performers. And so really knowing when to leverage which tool as a leader is critical.
Yeah.
Totally agree.
Yeah, I love that. I love thinking of like I like to think of it as like a tool belt of all these different modalities that we can use. So we can whip out the training, we can whip out the coaching, we can whip out the managing. Like there's all of these different things that we can leverage. And I think just that recognition alone is really powerful. So when you enter into a conversation and you're working through something with someone, you can be deciding, okay, what tool is actually best fit for this specific scenario? And sometimes it's a mix of tools. Sometimes you start with coaching and then you get to a point where you're like, okay, let's switch. I think consulting or mentoring might be good for this situation. But I think that especially with what has been coming up for a lot of people, coaching is really powerful to build trust with your team and amongst team members. So I think it's such a critical skill. When it comes to just the importance and, why coaching became a focus at Bobbie, I'd love to just dive into that piece with you, Ashley? How did it come up that coaching was going to be a focus for the company?
Yeah, we are. So first of all, I will say I am very fortunate to work with two fabulous female co-founders who truly believe in the importance of what it means to be a great coach. They show up, they are great coaches, and they want to continue to create great coaches throughout. And the other thing that I will say, Bobbie is a small but growing team. When I joined, this was about a year ago, we were around 15 people. We implemented a coaching framework earlier this year when we were around 40. Very rarely do you hear companies or even have an HR person on staff at 40 people, but very rarely do you hear companies at 40 people saying, we are going to double down and teach everyone and give them, Misha, to your point, tools in their tool belt to be able to be great coaches. And so the big thing of like how we've approached it at Bobbie, there's twofold. One is the investment in our leadership team. So anyone who is director and above, and how we're investing in them from a coaching standpoint. And then the other one is that day-to-day coaching of everyone as a coach. Even if you're not managing someone, sometimes you have to coach in a situation with someone. Maybe you're on a project. And so frankly, it was a no-brainer for us to be able to go ahead and move through like the coaching piece of it. I think the other thing when we think about what we're building at Bobbie, and I think about coaching, the core of coaching is getting curious and asking the right questions. It is core to what we do in everything. One of our core values is nurture the tension. And what that means for us is we embrace unknowns, we practice humility, and we ourselves are creating a culture of learners. And so I guess the best Bobbie way to put it is we get curious about everything, and that really lends itself well to creating this world of coaching. I think the other thing, and this is a really big thing for us, is that we recognize that our managers and our leaders are multipliers of culture. They are impacting the employee experience every single day and every single touch point that they do. And so why wait? You have a team, you have people who can do it. I have the expertise. Let's go. What better way to invest in your people than with coaching and the tools and the resources, especially being fully remote?
Yeah, I love that. I think coaching is a life skill. Like we should learn this.
Such a life skill.
Yes, like
it shows up everywhere.
Yeah, it's so powerful and so impactful. And to your point, I think it's important to recognize, I think there's this term, leadership that we use often, and it's often associated with managers and executives at the company. But there are times where people come to you and they need you to hold space, and they need you to ask questions that open them up to, different opportunities, and it could be peer-to-peer. And so coaching can be impactful every single day in, any conversation that you're having. So I think that's a really important part. It doesn't have to just be a management skill.
Yeah.
And so just rolling with the focus on the importance of coaching. Obviously, we kind of alluded in the beginning that there are situations where we jump in and we're like, yes, this is amazing coaching. This feels so powerful. And then there's other times where we jump into conversations and we're like, oh, this is not coaching at all. So, Rachel, from your experience, why does coaching fail?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think there's various reasons. I think one, you talked about the situation where you just show up and it actually doesn't land, right? It's just not helpful in the moment. I think that can be for a number of reasons, right? So we want to solve someone else's problem. Like I come from a people partner background. I've been training people partners on how to be better coaches for the last few years. And, as a people partner or as a manager, you're really valued because you can solve problems. You have great critical thinking skills. You understand the context. You have urgency. You understand the goals. You jump jump in and you want to solve problems.
Mhm.
But that's not empowering. It's also assuming that you have the context that you need. It's
Mhm.
kind of jumping in with there's only one right answer. And sometimes there's many answers, but you have power as a manager or leader. And so you're kind of imposing your answer
Mhm.
on someone who actually now doesn't have any autonomy to go solve and deduce what's actually right for their team. So I think coaching goes wrong when, one, you think you're coaching because you're starting to hold space, but you're actually not really curious and you're not asking powerful
Mhm.
questions. You're jumping in with your own answers.
Mhm.
I think coaching goes wrong when you're actually not actively listening to the
Mhm.
other person and you start to listen to your own mental whirlwind. So
Mhm.
let's say I ask you, what are you stressed about? I'm thinking we're having a connected conversation. You start to tell me about all the performance reviews you have to write. And then I start to say, oh man, I have a lot of those too. The way I handle it is like X, Y, and Z. And I go into my own inner monologue. So I'm really all of a sudden not holding space for you. I'm
Mhm.
shifting, even though I think I'm being helpful by sharing my own experience.
Mhm.
So there's many ways in the moment that coaching can go wrong by really not active listening and not focusing on powerful questions and leaving space for the other person and actually building a path for that person to solve their own problem.
Mhm.
Mhm.
I think there's also ways that coaching goes wrong, like systematically, just like in our approach to coaching, not just to management, but to like a coaching relationship with a professional coach, which is that people often come to coaching because they have some blind spots. But if
Mhm.
you just take that person's view of their circumstance, we're missing all the blind spots. So I
Mhm.
think it's critical to start any coaching dynamic with a 360 or with some way of observing them in action, really getting that systemic point of view of what's happening with their boss. What are their peers saying? How about their direct reports? How are they showing up as a leader? What are their strengths and weaknesses? And
Mhm.
actually articulating clear goals for working together. So it feels like you're moving in a business critical direction. You're preparing this person to be the next successor for their boss's role. You're helping them overcome a real challenge that they're working on today. They're in a rut with how they're leading. You're actually very concrete and targeted in what you're working on so that it doesn't just feel like a therapy set of sessions. It feels like you are really helping them maximize their performance. So just wanted
Mhm.
to share those two thoughts where coaching fails.
Yeah. Yeah, I think to your point, like the 360 is so important because we don't know what we don't know. And we can, hold up the mirror and talk about language and all of these things, but there are some things that we're just not aware of. And so it is helpful to get that feedback from other people. Um, so speaking of programs, I'm curious what programs both of you have put in place at your companies to facilitate coaching. I know this is an area where both of you have spent a lot of time. So would love to hear just what you've put in place and just get a sense of that for everyone.
Ashley, do you want to go first?
I can, yeah, sure. So we have what I would say is like a dual approach. We have an external coach that we partner very closely with for our leadership team. And then we also host internal training sessions with an internal learning and development person.
Mhm.
I'm going to walk you through like how coaching shows up at 3 different levels. One is the leadership, second is managers, and then the third is like everyone else, just to break it down in terms of approach. The first thing that we actually did with coaching is we started with our leadership team. And so it was very clear from the beginning that we wanted to make sure that we were setting aside and making that financial investment in that leadership team. And the way that we define leadership team at Bobbie is anyone who is director and above. We interviewed many external coaches. It is a large financial investment, and we wanted to make sure that we chose the right one. I will say wholeheartedly, the coaches that we work with today, the executive coach, their whole ethos and vibe could not be more on brand for the Bobbie team and what we're building. And so what that program actually looks like, it's twofold. One is they have an opportunity to work with an individual coach. It is on their terms. It is on their time. We do not tell them that they have to meet with a coach once a month, once a week, etc. It's really take what you need, because that's what's really important for us. Mm-hmm. The second thing is we host training sessions. And so we're continuing to equip our senior most leaders with tools in their toolbox. And it has covered everything from building trust to accountability to ownership, all of the big things that you think about when scaling a company. Mm-hmm. And the goal that we're hoping to get through landing this coaching program with our leaders, 3 things. 1, they gain clarity about their strengths and their potential as a leader. The second is that they integrate more vulnerability and courage when they show up as a leader. And the last and certainly final thing is increasing their potential of their innate leadership capabilities. So think about trust, partnership, confidence, authenticity, and all of those things. The one thing was very clear. We knew we did not want to stop with our senior leaders, and coaching is a part of everyone's role at the team. And so we're now focusing on our managers. We're getting ready to launch group coaching circles at the top of August. I'm actually very excited about this. I've done this before in the past. And so I really light up about this because I love it. I think there's so much benefit for the people that are sitting around you and leveraging them and how they're working through some situations. And so the way it will work is that it will be small groups, 3 people. They'll meet twice a month for 90 minutes. And then we only have 6 people managers. It's not big. And so we'll bring them together for what we call a community hour. In addition to that, we'll also have training sessions as well. Last and certainly not least is the rest of the Bobbie team. Earlier this year, we rolled out coaching for everyone. The first thing that we actually grounded in, what was our framework? So what were we training people on, and what did that mean? We chose the Grow Coaching framework because that's something that I've been trained before in the past. And it was a mix of both education as well as actually spending most of the time in breakout sessions and allowing people to practice. Repetition is key. Coaching is hard. And I will never forget my first coaching conversation. And so that's really what we were baking in there.
Ashley, it's so fun to hear your implementation at a smaller scale, because we are doing some similar things, but we have 1,300 managers, 9,000 employees globally. So it's different. We also came at it from a lens of how do we actually really invest in our top talent and accelerate our succession planning versus how do we build a general culture of coaching. I think that our critical need is we are fast growing. People are literally doing a different job every 6 months. I came 2 years ago and we were 2,000 people. So if you think about that growth as a leader, you're leading a 12-person team one year and you're leading a 150-person team the next year. You have a completely different leadership team. You have to be a different leader. And so it requires an incredible growth mindset and agility and resilience. And so we're really trying to provide people with the kind of extra asset of resources to have the space and time to reflect, take a step back, think about who they're being, and just grow more intentionally in the right direction. So we've done some similar things. So I'll share a few. One is we have a Managing at Stripe program. And so anyone who's a new manager at Stripe goes through it. It involves a number of core skills, as we talked about, kind of building that management toolkit. And coaching is one of them. So we have a coaching module. We also teach the GROW model. We teach powerful questions, active listening, meta view, acknowledgement, a few key coaching skills, and people practice together and then really try to apply that with their teams. And Managing at Stripe is over a sequence of weeks. So you learn a skill, you go practice, you have a cohort, you discuss it with. And it's not quite a coaching circle, but it is kind of your cohort going through the Managing at Stripe program. So that's one piece we do for our broad set of managers. The second thing we do is we have a program for our leaders. So kind of our managers of managers group all have access to an external coach through a company called Torch, but Better Up. There are many different kind of coaching at scale vendors that you could partner with. We chose Torch because they had some coaches that were very familiar with quickly scaling tech companies, and we appreciated their metrics-based approach and having a platform you could really dive into and understand who's leveraging coaches, how often, what are their survey results, et cetera. So we could really rapidly improve our program there. And, feedback with external vendors is always mixed, right? So you can have a really good partnership. They can be a great company, but still it really just comes down to the connection and how great the actual coaching sessions are. And that's variable, right? Depending on who is a right fit for the person that they're working with. So we learned a bit from a pilot there, like refined our partnership. And then we also launched, I'm a top talent people partner now. So I'm really focused on how do I enable our entire people partner team and our leaders across the company to more intentionally invest in, retain and grow our top talent. And so I started kicking off a coaching circles program. So I'm going to sound like Ashley, but just in a scaled way.
I love it.
I piloted coaching circles with 4 different groups of 6 managers of managers or org leaders. So kind of peer groups who had already leveraged Torch. So they had tried coaching, they'd done a 360, they had some familiarity with the coaching process. And our goal with these coaching circles was to teach coaching skills so that people were practicing them in the circle and actually leveraging them with their teams. We meet every other week. To Ashley's point, we wanted people to, 1, become more self-aware and understand their strengths and gaps. So they all did a 360, all discussed their goals with each other. We wanted them to more intentionally and thoughtfully live our leadership operating principles. So these are things like obsessing over talent, elevating ambitions, leading with clarity and context, very like Stripe culture. How do you lead at Stripe and be really resilient and continue to drive the team in the right direction? And we wanted them to be more prepared for their next role. So like in a concrete way, becoming a successor to their manager or to a role we've identified. So those are our goals for coaching circles. And now we have developed a kind of tech-wide pilot of this program. So we started with just the top talent pilot. And with tech enablement, we've developed a tech-wide program now we're going to roll out called Leadership Principles in Practice, which is just supporting these coaching circles at scale across tech, which is our biggest part of our business. We will then scale it across the company, but we wanted to start with a focused group of leaders who had a lot of buy-in and could really participate in the modules. And we are training people partners to facilitate those circles. So instead of using Torch, which was one option, and we considered that, the feedback we got was that people really appreciated having an internal expert who understood Stripe, given it's such a unique, quickly growing, crazy context. And we really did a bunch of contracting at the beginning about these being confidential, being not performative, being really because we want to invest in you and you have a safe space to depend on each other. You can talk about your own career if you need to. You can talk about your team and how to best support them. This is safe and confidential. And so we really are trying that as one model. So just wanted to share that there's all kinds of ways to do this, but that's what we're doing at Stripe.
Yeah, but I think the thing I am hearing is there is some overlap. There's some things that work well. I love that everyone's doing the coaching circles. I feel like everyone who loves coaching loves a good group coaching session.
Love a good circle.
I will say, it's interesting for the top talent work that I was piloting. Our CEO and our head of HR really wanted to invest in top talent meaningfully and think about how do we enable the people partner team to do so as well. So I've been coaching 20 internal executives myself and doing these circles. And it's been interesting to look at the difference. And obviously, I think the individual time for someone who, has huge decisions on their plate, they have global ramifications, they don't have someone else to go to, but they want someone who has Stripe context is really powerful and helpful. And we've gotten really good feedback on that. But at first I made an assumption that it was really managers of managers who would want the circle and that the executives would really benefit from one-on-one. And I'm starting to really believe that pairing people in like product and engineering or go to market and product pairs where they're actually having some challenges collaborating, and having coaching partnerships would be really valuable. I coach a lot of co-founders outside of my Stripe role, and I see that like coaching that system and helping them collaborate has just such large ramifications on the entire company's ability to collaborate, that I see that as the future as well. So I just wanted to mention that. I think we have this idea that one-on-one is the best and the most expensive, but actually I think in intentional partnerships, you can make a lot more progress.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so interesting. We've actually found the same thing at Pando with our customers. So initially, at Pando, we're helping companies to build these frameworks around career development. And typically it's for managers and ICs. But what we've been finding more and more is that executives are like, hey, just because I'm an executive doesn't mean I don't want to grow and grow together. So they're actually creating their own executive competencies and rubrics, and collaboration is often a big competency that we see with them. Yeah. They're wanting to work together and figure out how to work together. So that's really interesting.
And it makes total sense, right? So you need the head of sales and the head of product to be aligned on like, what are we building? What's the timeline to sell it? And it has large sweeping ramifications for everyone under them. And so if those two partners can't debate, discuss, like, talk about trade-offs and what they're not going to do, then everyone under them is misaligned. So I think that's actually the critical place to start.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So with everything that we're talking about, obviously there's an end goal to all of the systems and the support that you're both putting in place from a coaching perspective within your organizations. And I'm sure that's largely retention and optimizing the lifetime value that your employees have at the company. So I'm curious what both of your thoughts are on how coaching actually helps managers to retain their people that, could be located anywhere with the remote and hybrid work that we're in today.
I think, Rachel, go ahead.
Okay, I'll jump in here and then please add on. So I was just going to say, I think, so our biggest exit reason is burnout right now. And the second is career development. And we think about these in terms of actually spaces where managers have the most critical role in supporting and helping to problem solve with the people on their team. So I think that when you are being directive as a manager, you're helping someone meet the company's expectations, right? You're helping them perform and reach, the next level of their career trajectory. But when you are thinking about their own career development and where they want to go and what their life aspirations are, and how the time spent at this company is going to help them reach their aspirations, that's a time for coaching, empowerment, and like spaciousness for them to dream big and for them to connect the dots of how can they create opportunities for themselves and how can you help advocate for them. And I think that that's like this tacit agreement you have with everyone who comes to your company. It's like performance for career development, and they're not the same thing. And one requires guidance and clear expectations and an understanding of the company's goals, and the other requires coaching and openness to this individual's dreams and their career goals, and that their time spent is valuable. And how are you going to help them maximize their time spent? And so I just want to kind of share those two sides of, okay, this is about career development for them. And if they feel empowered to actually design their time and to line up their strengths and their interests with the business needs, they're going to be at the company for a long time. And we see that people come to Stripe because they want really meaningful, fulfilling work. You work with the best people of your life. You have the most challenging work. You're going to be pushed. You're going to strive. It's not for everyone. It's for people who are really committed to excellence and growth. And so we try to see that the result of coaching and like this skill can really help people have conversations around their own career and their time spent. I think that we have seen that really show up in our StripeSat results. So we have a engagement survey, and this target population that I talked about of leaders in tech that we invested in coaching over the last 6 months, their scores on like, I'm likely to be here in 2 years, and I feel like Stripe's really invested in my career, have gone up, while the rest of the company, didn't go up to the same measure. So it felt like, wow, this target population really felt our investment. So I just wanted to share a couple of those tidbits.
I would completely agree with you, Rachel, on all those points. I also absolutely love your call out on performance and coaching and the difference between what those look like. Because I think a lot of times people actually think they're one and the same thing, and they're not. Mm-hmm. I think the other thing when you think about retention, and we talked a little bit about it through this conversation, is really pushing others to continue to think critically, find solutions to any challenges they have, allow them to have the autonomy over their work, which is so important in a virtual world. I am not sitting next to the people that I work with on a day-to-day basis. And so having the trust and building that relationship for that person to be able to make those decisions and be confident is really important. I think the other big thing, and you touched on this a little bit, Rachel, is just making sure that people are going after their career goals, their aspirations, and what that looks like. And by having managers in a position where they're being able to go from managing to coaching, they're guiding them, they're supporting them, they're asking all of the right questions, and they're really pushing them to grow their career and get curious.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. I think it's critical. It's not like a question anymore. Like, should we have coaching? It's like, if you don't have it, you're already in a bad position. Like, you have to have coaching. And maybe some people don't use the term coaching, but a lot of the aspects of coaching are so vital. To both of your points, to building the trust, to aligning with career goals, so that people feel like, okay, the things that I'm doing are actually getting me to where I want to go. And I'm not here just cog in the wheel, no idea how this is connected to my goals or the goals of the company. So using coaching for that, I love it. Last question here before we dive into some of the questions that are coming through from the audience. What is one tangible thing that a manager or a people team member could implement today in order to start using coaching more effectively?
I can start, Rachel, and then feel free to jump in. The one thing, as I was thinking through, what this looks like and what is a good takeaway, I think some of this is self-reflection and maybe asking, like, how are you showing up as a coach, and how are you modeling that coaching behavior for the people that you are working with? And so again, like, that reinforcement is key in how it shows up. Simple things, just starting to notice when you're giving direction versus when you're asking questions. We talked a little bit about being an empathetic listener. A lot of times we're really focusing on what we plan to say next versus really listening to what the person is saying. And so even taking that minute to really be in the moment and sit with it is really important. And then, are you asking those high mileage questions? Are they open-ended? Are they drawing people in to get curious and to actually come up with solutions themselves versus telling them the answers?
Mm-hmm. Love it.
Yeah, I think building on what you said, Ashley, about really being intentional with when you're coaching, I just want to make a point that I think in high risk situations that are urgent, where you have the right answer, you should not be coaching. You should jump in, support,
totally agree.
Get there. But in low risk situations where the other person's high skill and you want to help empower and grow them, you have to give them space and help them grow through coaching. And so I think the one really simple thing that people can do tomorrow is to start paying attention. Is this a really high risk, urgent situation where I have the answer? And if it's not, how can I help this person get to a great answer there are many possible answers. Let me ask them what their goal is, who their stakeholders are, what context they're lacking, what timeline they need. Let me help them get to the right outcome, and like help coach them along the way versus jump in, because that way you have capacity to grow yourself, because you're really empowering the people on your team to take it to the next level.
Love it. Love it. Thank you both. Okay, great. So with the time that we have left here, let's jump into a couple of questions from the audience. So the first question is, how do you solve for managers and leaders who resist engaging in coaching?
My perception here, so when I kicked off this top talent pilot, we had a bunch of leaders who I'd worked with as a people partner who were like, I want this, please sign me up right now. And then we had some who were like, I'm so overwhelmed. I'm working all through the weekends. Like, I don't have time right now, but I'd come back to me in 6 months. And then we had a couple who said, hey, given like where I'm at with Stripe right now and my concerns about my role, like, I don't feel safe talking to someone internal. I'd like an external coach. And I thought that is actually a really good spectrum of the likely, like, of what you're going to get, right? You're going to get people who are worried this is performative and they're not safe. They're not comfortable talking yet. And they want other people to go first. So there's like a reputation built around why this is useful and the fact that it's safe and that you can grow, and you can see the impact and it's time well spent. And other people will jump right in. And like, I've had coaching before, I'm hungry. I show up to my first session and I like take up every last minute with valuable insight and interaction. And so I think you should expect that spectrum, and a way to really get people on board is by actually giving them some choice and agency up front, not forcing them into coaching, getting great quotes, building a reputation that it's useful, sharing that, celebrating it, and over time, like building that culture naturally. So that's what I would say.
I completely agree, Rachel. And I think it's really understanding where is it coming from and why is there resistance? Why is there concern? And then, Rachel, to your point, really figuring out what is the best solution, because it's not one size fits all.
Yeah, I could not agree with you more. Is like the first question is, where's the resistance coming from? Or where are you feeling the resistance? And I think that just lends to being, that's coaching in itself, is opening up the door to ask that question and asking, it seems like you're unavailable for this. Where is that coming up for you? And that's a good awareness for the other person, if they're being truthful with themselves and if they're open to the response and the answer. I think it's really powerful. Just
one addition there. I think you have to like really leave space to recontract at any moment with a coaching relationship. So people are really busy. I mean, literally every time I have a coaching session, I know that leaders are getting pinged from 20 different directions and they're having to make a trade-off. Like, I'm going to take this hour versus this like high yield meeting that I should have and I can't fit into my calendar this week. So I know that it's like every time a fight for them to protect that space. And so I think it's really critical to leave space to say at the beginning, hey, this is for you. We want to maximize your benefit from this. And at any point, if you're not getting what you need, I want you to say it. And here's like the kinds of things you could say. If you see that someone's not coming to the conversation, saying, hey, what is preventing you from doing this? And sometimes they're just like, you're right, I want this. And I'm letting my calendar overcome my need for growth and I am going to recommit. Or, hey, actually, like, I need something different. Here's what I need. So I think that that's a really critical part of getting buy-in as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's part of the self-care required for resilience, which is the conversation that was before us. It's like that much needed space. Some people use therapy, some people use whatever it might be. Okay, great. So next question. How do you coach an executive to do a 360 to set a baseline for their coaching when they're not open to doing the 360 before coaching kicks off?
I have never had a leader refuse to do a 360. I think there's a couple conditions for why. People, going back to like, what's the motivation to resist? I think one, it's like time. do I want to ask all these leaders for a bunch of time if they've just done a performance review, for example? So like, how recently have they gotten feedback, and can you leverage all that feedback to kind of replace the 360, or do you need this 360 at this moment in time? Two, I think people are very scared that coaching is performative. And once you do this 360, everyone's going to judge them as a leader. And if they don't get high scores, then, job's going to be at risk. So it's about like, who has access to this 360? What's it going to be used for? And making sure that that 360 is used for growth and for their own development, not a performance situation. I think the third is just saying, hey, I don't want you to waste any time here. I want you to really feel clear about what you're going to get out of this. You might have some blind spots. Everyone does. And if you don't get that 360, we're not going to be able to work on any self-awareness aspects of your growth. And so I've found that this is really valuable. And here's why. So I think that those three things might help.
Great. Love it. I think we have time for one more question here. I'm just looking at the time here. How do you show ROI of coaching at orgs that might be skeptical?
This is a really hard one.
Yeah.
I think it's also important, right? So I think that what you said, Ashley, was Bobbie, is like the founders are fully engaged in coaching, and like you're building a culture of coaching. I work at a much more, we are building a business. We're building the GDP of the internet, or we want to increase the GDP of the internet. We're building economic infrastructure globally. It's a finance and engineering driven culture, and so it's not actually innately prone to investing in coaching. I think that the way that we've gotten here is that we did a study on what differentiates top talent leaders from other leaders. And some of the qualities were that they're really obsessing over talent and investing in developing their team. And that enables them to be more strategic and work cross-functionally on more large-scale initiatives because they're building their team and building their bench thoughtfully. And so that led us to, okay, how do we actually build this capacity in leaders to unlock their own success? I think that we have looked at pre and post 360s. So we do a pre and post assessment of our leadership operating principles. We look at changes on team StripeSat scores, so engagement scores. So how are they showing up for their team, and how does that differ before and after a coaching engagement? We're looking at attrition on their team, on people's teams as well, and their own engagement and attrition. So those are things that, there are so many variables impacting these elements that you can't exclusively attribute coaching to these, improvements, et cetera. But we are trying to look at these over time, and we look at the differences between internal and external coaching to keep tabs on like what is having the most impact for the cost.
Yeah. And I would say even too, like, if it is hard to get started, or if you don't have buy-in, or if you have resistance, lean into others that are doing it and how they've seen success. Build the business case and bring that and show that. And I think that it's a really helpful way to start to build potentially the founder's relationship with what coaching could do for the organization.
Yeah, there's also so much like broad research about why coaching is impactful. And so I think leveraging the business case internally, to Ashley's, your point, but also kind of building on research that like BetterUp has published, or that Torch has shared, or any of these coaching companies that are publishing research about why coaching is impactful. I think that you can really leverage that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We are at the end. I knew this was going to fly by. So we're at the end here. Thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you, Ashley. Thank you, Rachel, for all of your insight in this great conversation. If you have any more questions, feel free to keep dropping those in the comments. We're happy to, answer those and get back to you. Don't leave just yet. In the next 15 minutes, we have our next session coming up around making careers, which is going to be focused on tactical ways managers can develop diverse and distributed talent. So we'll see you all in 15 minutes. Thanks again, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.